Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. I've got my buddy Jeff Gonzales of Trident Concepts. Funny thing, the last time I saw Jeff, his penis was on my leg. And I have been tempted to share that video via social media, but I have not because I don't want to do anything injurious to his reputation or business. I didn't plan to start that way.
Well, I think now in my defense, you have to share the video.
Why is Jeff Gonzales' penis on my knee?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I'm just saying. We were screwing around at SHOT Show, and it wasn't technically his penis. So you're down in Austin, Texas.
That is correct.
You work out of The Range, quote unquote, is the name of the facility. It's a beautiful indoor.
Yes, it is. It's a 52,000 square foot indoor facility. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah, it's huge. And we do a lot of work there. So basically what I've done is I've taken the Trident Concepts curriculum and the reputation and the brand, and we brought all of the training indoors to that facility. So it's kind of nice. It's that's the thing that I think separates that type of an indoor facility from any. I mean, they're jokingly called country clubs.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So what separates us from just about every other one is that they have a nationally recognized, established trainer that brought in their curriculum to provide to the customer and member base. So we're doing outstanding. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of
referring to yourself.
No, well, I'm referring to the organization, The Range in Austin. I'm just the director of training there. So
but I'm saying you're referring to you. They brought you in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They brought and the training, the training programs and some of our training staff. So that makes it kind of nice. Now I still travel for Trident Concepts exclusively all over the country. I just don't do it quite as much. Mm-hmm. Which is good and bad. It's good in the sense that I get a chance to actually grow some roots, which is weird because I haven't done that my entire adult life. And then as soon as I'm on the road, I realize how much I don't like it, and I can't wait to get back home.
Sure. Yeah.
That works out perfect.
That's a fun observation for guys. I get messages from dudes all the time, and they're like, hey, man, what do I have to do what you do? And I go, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, train people to shoot guns. And there's like a whole discussion of that. And I go, well, what about that do you like? And they're like, well, shooting guns. And I go, well, I think maybe you have a different idea of what happens when you're teaching people, like we're not out there like blowing up fruit and having blinking, but yeah, sleeping out of motels and eating
it was, it's funny because I talked to a lot of guys that have done it for a good stretch of time, particularly former teammates of mine. And, first of all, it's pretty much all we know. If you come from a special operations background, you're constantly on the road, and your workups, deployments, everything in between. You spend very little time at home, so there's kind of a familiarity there. But then, when I started doing this, it was kind of cool in the sense because there was not a lot of people doing it at the time. I mean, when I first started working in this private sector, there was one other SEAL that was a notable SEAL that was training in the firearms industry.
How long ago was that?
So I officially started Trident Concepts in 2003, but in 2001, we were actually trained in the private sector. I was working with another organization, and then we decided to do things on.
I lost you.
I don't know why. I'm on the Wi-Fi. So I can't. I'm so grateful that we decided to break off and do things on our own because, that was 2003. We're like 16 plus years of doing this. And like I was saying, for like the first 3 to 5 years, it was kind of cool. We were definitely living the rock star life. Things were great. There was, like I said, there wasn't a lot of people that were out there doing it. So my dance card was constantly full. Mm-hmm. Then as the war started to wind down, you started to see a lot of new things occur, and that's good and bad. There's a lot of great new information being brought to the general public. you know, I mean, there's also the time-tested material that's just going to survive no matter what you're doing. So it's been very interesting to see the last decade or so in this firearms industry, what's happened, where we've gone, what we're doing. I say that. No.
Something off my bookshelf. Keep talking.
Oh, interesting. No, it's interesting because there's such a change in this industry. And some of it is good and some of it is bad. Like, the things that I have a problem with is the gunfighting hasn't really evolved too much. There's a lot of things that have been interesting over the last several years, which is the fact that now we have, closed circuit TVs documenting so much of this information. Yeah. And then there's this quick knee-jerk reaction that these videos are like the holy grail brought to us from from a higher power. And that, I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is that just tells a partial story. That doesn't tell the entire story. There's plenty of incidences that are not being recorded, that are not being documented, and we're not privy to that information. And so there's this part of the industry that's going down this road, and they're making claims. And I always tell people that, hey, it is fantastic to be on the leading edge of that statistic, whatever that statistic is. If it says it's 79%, great, you're in the 79 percentile, that's outstanding. But if you happen to end up in the 21% category, that sucks balls. And so, the thought about it, I'm always like, so what are you going to do when you find yourself on the other end of that spectrum? What's your plan? How are you going to manage it? Usually it gets really quiet when I ask that question because most of the time people haven't thought about that.
Interesting observation. I talk about this. I was on the phone this morning with Paul Sharp. I don't know if you know Paul. Paul's a good buddy of mine. He's one of the ShivWorks guys. And we're commenting on the nature of the discussion was how training has been created based on what people perceive from data gleaned from things like police shooting or these millions of closed circuit camera footage. And it's like, why would I base my training on what an untrained person does? And like, you can look at it and say, well, okay, we see these dynamics of street violence and how violent criminals may act, but why would I base my response on what some turd carrying a revolver in his back pocket, what he chose to do or what he did right or wrong? You know what I mean?
I totally do. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is that people don't want, like, a lot of the people, like, I don't know Paul, I've never met him, but I know about him, and I know that he has a long legacy of training under his belt, and he didn't come by that training. He didn't come by that easily, right? That's an earned pathway. The problem that I see with people that immediately will start going to these videos is that they don't want to do the work. Yeah. They'd rather have somebody tell them exactly what they need to do based off of exactly. Yeah. Rather than living in a very dynamic environment where you have to think on your feet and be able to solve problems. This is the issue that I have with this type of thought process, is that we're neutering people's ability to think and actually manage the violence that they're going to be exposed to. Because what happens is that you put all your efforts into this area, 79%, so the number I pulled out of my ass. And then you find yourself in that 21% category, and it's like the deer in the headlights. You have no idea what you're going to do. You have no idea how to manage it, no idea what to do or where to go, because everything that you've ever been told, I said, you're never going to experience this. But I always remind people that never is a word that we really shouldn't use, unless you're dead, in which case you can use it all you want. But it's like, I hate to say it, but there's so much truth to the fact that you cannot predict with 100% certainty what type of experience you're going to find yourself in. And so rather than sit there and try to come up with all these shortcuts, put in the work, do the work, find yourself. Like, when we are looking at building a special operations, operator, whether it be on the Army or the Navy side, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And what we're ultimately trying to do is create somebody that can outthink the opponent. Now, on top of that, they have tremendous skill sets with fitness, with shooting, with just raw power. And so you bring all of that to the table on top of it, and that's one of the reasons why we're so damn successful.
Right,
so when I see the private sector kind of going down this road, it really troubles me, because I'll sit there and just kind of shrug my shoulders and go like, all right, well, that's cool. Go for it. Right. And then what do I'm not getting my response is like, how are you going to manage it when it doesn't go your way? Every mission that I ever was a part of, everything that could have gone wrong was on the verge of going wrong. And if it hadn't been for the fact that we had trained and had contingencies and rehearsed all of these things, that we were able to think on our feet and act with the most current intel that was being presented to us, and then be able to counteract and get it on, that is what allowed us to win those fights. And that is the type of mentality and philosophy that I try to bring to it. And I'm not trying to bring it at what I would consider like the grade school level. That's kind of like a lot of your entry level people. I'm trying to bring it to those that are at like the doctorate level, the future instructors that we're going to be seeing, once I decide to kind of step away from this. Because that's the problem that I see, is that right now I'm concerned about where things can go. We've lost some connection with, the roots from which we came from.
Two quick points. One, Paul definitely would agree with everything you just said. I only mentioned him. It wasn't like he was arguing like, hey, here's some...
No. Yeah. I believe that.
Make sure the listeners and viewers understand that. Quick point I didn't make to those of you guys that don't know who Jeff is. You're a veteran Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. And quick joke, how does a guy know if a Navy SEAL's a Navy SEAL?
I don't know how.
He'll tell you.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's some Green Berets. Green Berets usually will say, "How do you tell who the SEALs are in a bar?" And they'll say, "Because they've already told you." Yeah.
So how did
you didn't say that.
I was just gonna say, how did you find out I was a SEAL?
It's on your website.
Actually, I don't think I actually use the word SEAL.
No, you don't.
I don't. I know. It's fun. It's all in good fun. I do love it, because there's some truth to all of that. I'm not going to lie. Some of my teammates have done a disservice in some cases by being less than the silent, or what we used to call a quiet professional. So we'll leave it at that.
Anybody listening, I'm totally just having fun. I'm not in any way, shape, or disrespect.
Oh, and I hope everybody does realize that, because you and I have had great rapport just in the short time. I do enjoy that. That's one thing that I hope people can really appreciate. Yeah, right. One of the things that bothers me is that there's so many people that just have no ability to, they're so easily offended and so sensitive. It's like, bro, lighten the you know what? Yeah, right. Like, it just boggles my mind. Like, I'm sure there are things that'll piss me off, no doubt about it. But most of the time, it's from guys that know me really well. They know exactly what to say or what to do to piss me off. Yeah, I'm like, I just want to, But everybody else, it's just like, I'm like, oh, dude, man. First of all, don't take yourself so damn seriously. Don't believe your own hype. Don't take yourself so seriously. Every day, earn it. Every day, wake up and figure out how you're going to earn the reputation that you have been bestowed upon. So that means a lot to me, because my community, those are the ethos that we breed into our guys from the very, very beginning, is every day you have to do something to earn it.
Tell the listeners and viewers what an ethos is.
It's a great question. So ethos are a framework to your character. And it's what we rely on. So when we're building our future SEALs, and I was very lucky, because as a BUDS instructor, I got exposure to this at a much different level than I would have ever thought. What's absolutely critical is that we establish those ethos so early on, so that there is no question, there's no hesitation, there's no dilly-dallying. Everybody understands what they're doing, and it's just 100% commitment. So it's like the very first time I heard this was from a great friend of mine. He became one of our senior leaders, a guy named Tommy Vaughter. He had a saying, it's like all in all the time. And it was that exemplifies kind of like the ethos that we live by. And one of those ethos is earn your trident every day. What did you do today that you deserve to walk amongst these men before you that carried the torch, if you will?
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in the business of doing a lot of heavy shit. So
yeah. Somebody I recently chatted with made a comment the unit doesn't make the man makes the unit. And I
that makes a lot of sense. I could see that. I mean, yeah, it's true though.
Like shitty unit, probably made up of shitty men. And
that's so true.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I'll take it one step further. You know, there's two parts to everything, but one of the things that, and I'll be honest, in my early days, I didn't want it. I didn't want leadership responsibilities. As a young frogman, all I wanted to do was be the first guy through the door. I didn't want to manage anything. I just wanted to be the guy that was pulling the trigger as fast as possible. And it was great, and I'm grateful for that because it gave me a totally different perspective. And when I reached a senior level, you know, it was funny because I'm checking out of my command going to Buds, and as I'm going to my training department, there's a old, you know, Vietnam era frogman, and he was running the training department. Great guy. I learned so much from that guy. It wasn't even funny. And I remember I'm checking out and I'm all kind of like butthurt about it. I'm like, oh man, I'm leaving the East Coast. I got to go and do this instructor thing. And I just, and he kind of, I remember he sat up from his desk. He got like all rigid, and he was he was not happy with me at all. And he's like, listen, you earned all the experience that you have right now, but you owe it to the Navy to give it back. And I was like, she did it again. So, and he was right. You know, I earned all of that experience, but I owed it to the Navy to give it back. And so when I went out to Buds, I had a completely different perspective, and I was very lucky because I was mentored by some great guys out there as well, guys that I still consider to be very close friends. And they, you know, they helped drive the point home for me that is, you know, that's our gateway to the community. We are the gatekeepers, and I'm very proud of the fact that I finished off my tour of duty down there.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's talking with a friend of mine that works with young guys at Great Lakes here, and they're like, they're not yet SEALs, but I guess it's like his stop is the first stop for dudes that are going into that pipeline. And they're probably trying to break them down and find the weakest ones. I'm assuming he's towards the end of his career, so that's what he's spending his time on. But he said he kind of had an initial feeling like you're describing, and then it kind of dawned on him, like, I'm the first person that these young men will come in contact with in their special operations career.
Exactly.
I've got this chance to like really mold men into warriors or in good dudes, or I can give them a bad attitude and complain that I'm having to swim laps.
One of the things that I think we did as a community, and I didn't know how to, and you know, again, I wasn't, had mixed feelings about it, was we started this mentorship program. What you're describing is a mentorship program. And the idea behind this was, first of all, you know, Congress had mandated that we stand up 2 full new SEAL teams. And to do that, like, I'm like, I mean, that's 160 dudes out of nowhere, 2 of them. So you're talking like over 300 dudes that we had to just, or 200 dudes that we had to just create. So, what we did was we had to figure out, well, how come we're losing so many guys at Buds? What's the, you know, our attrition rate is so high. It's like, you know, depends on what time of year it is, anywhere from 75 to 85%. And so what they were trying to figure out was, you know, what can we do to create somebody that's more resilient, that will survive the first filter, if you will, which is Buds, and be more reliable as they move forward in their career. And that's where the mentorship program came from. So the mentorship program is actually the first step in the journey. And it's not easy. I mean, to get into the mentorship program is tough. I mean, there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. When I was working on a bill here in Texas 4 or 5 years ago, I can't remember what it was. It was just right after Chris Kyler passed away, and I did a lot of I testified in front of the panels and whatnot. And when it finally was approved and signed, I was down there for the signing, and Governor Perry had sort of like an executive assistant that was with him. And this dude was, I mean, AJ squared away. I mean, he had everything going for him. And he was part of a mentor program. And that dude had to fight his way to get into that mentor program just to make that first step. So it's not easy to get in there. And once they're in there, they are exposed to how to prepare them for what they're going to be exposed to, a little bit of the training aspect, the mentality of it. And it helps to weed out those people so that those that leave the mentor program that actually go straight into the Buds pipeline are a higher percentage of actually being successful. So I do like it now because by the time they get to buds, the product that we're working with is a slightly better, slightly improved product, a little bit more mature, a little bit more dialed in, a little less kind of like wishy-washy. So it's good. It's a good approach.
A pre-filter.
Yeah, exactly.
I dig it. It'd be really great if we could implement some of that stuff into grade schools and high schools. And
well, yes. Well, now that gets into a very muddy waters of actually
not from a military.
No. What I meant is like performance standards.
Yeah,
because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about having performance standards. And first of all, man, dude, you want to talk about performance standards? I'm all over that, because I think anything and everything that we do, we want there to be performance standards, and we want to hold people to these standards. It's like, it's like, and again, it kind of goes into when we start to dilute the waters, if you will, with regards to this training. What you run into is you're now looking at instructors that don't know how to instruct. They don't know how to develop curriculum. They don't know how to diagnose shooter errors. They don't know how to actually connect with their students. Because what the best thing that I can tell people if they're looking at becoming an instructor is you have to be like, I'm a dysfunctional extrovert. I mean, truthfully, my social makeup is more of an introvert, but because of my job, I have to be an extrovert, and I'm just a dysfunctional extrovert, if you would. So one of the things that you have to do, one of the things that really classifies you as an instructor, is your ability to connect with students. Because if you cannot connect with your student, and if you cannot understand how they learn or what their learning abilities, disabilities are, you're not going to get through to them. And we have some very tough performance standards. I mean, it's a known entity. People avoid coming to our classes because there's this looming possibility that they could fail in every class. But every student that signs up, I tell them right off the bat, listen to me right now. You have done more than the majority of the other students that are out there just joking around doing all this other crazy stuff. You've done more because you put yourself in a vulnerable position where you know that you potentially could fail. So you're already better than all these other people that didn't want to take that first step. You're already leaps and bounds above where they are. More importantly, you're here, which means that you're willing to put yourself on the line like that. You're willing to put your ego on the back burner and really work hard to figure out what to do. And what that tells me is that you're going to be successful. The fact that you're sitting right here in this classroom, you'll be successful. Now, how we define success can be different. Some people are going to say, well, I have to get a certificate. That's the only way I can define success. And I'm like, well, you already failed, buddy. Others are going to say, I need to be able to walk out of here feeling as though there was behavioral change, because that's what learning is. Learning is behavioral change that has driven me in a more effective direction, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create gunfighters that are the most efficient and effective gunfighters out there.
Go ahead. You're going to.
No, that was it.
There's a million ways I could respond to that. I want to go back to what you said earlier.
Sure.
When we began talking, you said gunfighting hasn't changed much. I'm like, if we start talking about like guys loading guns like this, that's one thing. But I know my first gun was a Remington pump shotgun. I still have it, and it would still be something that it was probably bought in 1988. And so like a gun like that hasn't changed. Still walk into a Walmart and buy one out of the gun case. Same exact gun. So like people talk about like advancements in weapon mounted lights, and I've got friends that show me pictures of them with like mag lights taped to their right, things like that. Like I'm talking about back in the day, right?
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
So like this is the book I grabbed.
Absolutely, man.
Like guys will talk to me once every couple months. I'll grab a bunch of books like this out of my bookshelves. Jim Cirillo, this dude, another, and I'll lay them out and I'll take a picture and I'll post it up to Instagram or something like that. And I'll say like, who's read any of these? And it's like, well, it's like a black and white picture of a guy, Smith & Wesson revolver, and
there's no pictures in there.
There's a couple.
I know, but I'm joking because there's words people have to read.
Yeah. And they look at it like it's not applicable. And I'll tell folks, they're like, well, what's a revolver? This guy could hit a target in like a half a second with that revolver. In like, that's It's insanity. I think actually he could draw and fire in 0.26 seconds was a recorded time shot that he made on a target, a quarter of a second, 0.26.
So one of the things that, first of all, I find to be extremely valuable is that reading a book like that, like one of my favorite books is, it's an old ass book. It's A Rifleman Went to War. It's about World War One. It's about rifle shooting in World War One. But some of the material that I took out of that book was it's a great book. I mean, it's a fantastic book. I mean, first of all, World War One was, that was rough. Second of all, it's about this guy who was, great rifle shot, joined the Canadian Army and was able to deploy over there and get into the fight before America was. And this guy was making 1,000-yard shots with a rifle from World War One.
Bolt action. Yeah.
I mean, come on. This guy was, you want to draw on some lineage there. That's important stuff. But the thing that I tell people is that, like that book, that the one I just referenced, The Rifleman Went to War, there's probably 3 very powerful points that I took out of it. The rest of it was very interesting, and it's historical, and it's valuable, and it's who we are as a gun culture. It's our history. So if we don't study and know our history, first of all, you're an idiot. Second of all, you have really no place to stand and have a logical debate, because if you don't know anything about our past, I'm not willing to really take much of what you're talking about in the present, right? You're just making shit up, in other words. If you haven't learned from the past and created your own, and here's what everybody tries to do as soon as they get into the new market, as soon as you can tell right away how new somebody is, because they will brand their shit like they'll call stuff like, I don't know, like it's like crazy. It's like, the draw stroke is now the dynamic development of a pistol in a gunfight. I'm like,
I know exactly
you're just drawing it from the holster, and it really bugs me, because they're trying to differentiate themselves from everybody else, and they're doing it the wrong way. Because really, the only people they're going to attract are neophytes, people that don't know any better. The people that do know any better are going, this guy's been in business for about 3 to 6 months, maybe a year tops. Because you realize that's just not going to, you're not attracting the clientele that you want. And that's something that's important to me as an instructor. And I learned this a long time ago, that I'm very selective about the students that we want to work with. And when I say that, it's like I'm selective in the sense that the reputation precedes us. People that register know what they're getting into. Most of them, I should say. But every now and then there's somebody that doesn't know me from Adam, and they're just like, oh, this look fun. I think I'll do this for the weekend. Why not? But most everybody has done a little bit of research. They know what they're getting themselves into. And right off the bat, that tells me something about them as a student, as a person. That tells me that they are willing to put themselves in that kind of a tough situation. Everybody else, they eventually kind of figure it out. They change it. They go back to calling a speed reload as opposed to some crazy, whatever. Because fundamentals, the bullet comes out the barrel the same way. It hasn't changed. The way the bullet comes out of the barrel. What has changed are our tactics. What has changed is our technology, as far as like you were mentioning, like weapon mounted lights. It's so funny. I was laughing because I literally took a mag light and stuck it inside of my M203.
Really? Did it like have to stick some shims around it or something?
No, I just stuck it all the way in there, because we had our electrician guys in our commie tea shop. They actually took the tail cap and they ran a cord with a touchpad, and I ran it out through the M203, wrapped it around my mag well, and that's how I actuated my light.
That had to be heavy.
Oh, it was, dude. It was hilarious. We ran, like, the very first lights we had on our MP5s were 3 D-cell mag lights. They were awesome. Hose clamped onto the side of the, and what we had was, when we were doing our normal CQB stuff, we had different hand guards that didn't have the lights on them. So we only took the hand guards whenever we were doing real world stuff. So it's kind of like, wow. That was. So when I laugh, because I've got a bunch of guys that I work with, all great guys, but all, current generation Army and Navy and Air Force. And I'm like, don't you dare start to complain about your gear. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. My body armor that I wear, the very first body armor, was large. It was large. That was all the only. We had one size of body armor, large.
That's funny.
Well, what's so funny is I've talked to people, and I actually have a custom-made plate carrier. I can't tell you from where, but it's a custom-made plate carrier that's a medium or small or medium-sized plate carrier that has large frame pockets for plates.
Cool.
Because that was one thing I took away. I'm like, well, I could carry all this extra gear, but I have a super big ass plate in the front. So, all right, I'm down with that. So I have an actual plate carrier that was custom designed to carry a large plate on a medium kind of it's not proportionate. In other words, like everything's proportionate, but not mine. Not that bad boy. So,
have you ever done any training with some of the other personalities around the country as a student?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. I do it as much as I can, which is not as often. I mean, just recently, last month in February, I was working with Chris Costa. I've known Chris forever and a day.
I think I saw the pictures you put.
Yeah. And I had a great time in that class. Chris runs a good class. It was a high volume. We did a lot of stuff. I was able to put a lot of rounds down range. In fact, I made a very unique observation is that we had to run 2 relays. So we were shooting on the same target. And my partner that I was working with wasn't a very good shot. So I no longer had good feedback from the targets. Like by midday, we would change out targets pretty frequently, but after several runs, I would no longer have good feedback from the targets. So what I had to do is I had to redirect where my feedback was coming from, and I no longer could rely on the target to provide me that feedback, which is funny because that's exactly how you should be training in the first place. So I had to go back to my site management and giving me all the information that I needed as far as, what I'm doing, what I'm missing, what I'm not missing. So it was great. And I was talking to Chris about that. I'm like, dude, man, this is so awesome. It's, stuff I haven't done in a while. Like I haven't done positions in a while, since I've been working indoors, we just really haven't done position work. So it was great. I try to get to classes as often as I can. There were some years that my op tempo was so bad, I couldn't get to anything. I've tried to make that every year. I try to make that a personal mission to get to at least one, if not more than one class from another instructor. I'm hugely happy about that. I've got a, I'm not going to say who, but I got a big name guy, another very well respected top tier instructor coming to my class this weekend. So I'm not the only one that does it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I ask you that because usually anybody that I respect personally or is respected, not because my respect means anything, but mostly guys will answer the way you did. And I find some of the dudes that are more into creating their like trademark bullshit are the guys. I ain't gonna go train with that guy, or why don't get.
Well, I get that too. I've seen that firsthand. You go to something like SHOT Show and you get a chance to connect with some people, and there's some people that I guess the best way to put it is that they do have some preconceived notions. They're doing themselves a disservice because rather than actually finding out firsthand what the experience could be, they've kind of already created some false perceptions in some cases. I had a conversation with a guy at a SHOT, I don't know what day it was, and kind of got on. It eventually circled up to, oh man, I've been wanting to get to a class, and I'm like, dude, well, why haven't you?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it was like I thought it was going to be different, I'm like, I mean, all you had to do was just call, like ask, because that's what I feel like is lacking in this industry. First of all, there's a lot of me in this industry, and rightfully so. We're a capitalistic industry. Everybody's trying to put foot on the table. I get that. But what I also try to remind people is that, hey, listen, we're in a really bad fight right now. We're losing. And we cannot afford to have all this petty infighting. My job right now is to try to mentor some of these younger instructors to be able to, do you remember that commercial was I think it was a shampoo commercial. You tell one friend, they tell another friend, and just kind of like the TV screen just kept duplicating. So that's kind of how I look at my role these days. I'm still going to obviously provide firsthand knowledge of training and whatnot, but the other thing is to try to start mentoring some of these younger instructors from what I see that is necessary in this industry to be successful as we move forward. And one of those things is, we've got to, we're not going to win this fight for our way of being, way of living, our way of life in this country if we're constantly fighting ourselves.
Agreed.
I mean, that's just this. I mean, that's so basic. I mean, that's like you learn that watching freaking cartoons. Sure. So hopefully we'll see some of that stuff change here in the next couple of years.
I don't know if you knew this, but I've been a Second Amendment lobbyist and educator for some time. I run an organization here in Illinois that we're one of the groups that lobbied to change our firearm laws here, and still am doing that. And I commented recently to some guys who are really big social media personalities, but their ads to this discussion are like, shall not be infringed, government, or something to that effect. Like, hey man, like that's not how you affect any change. And so I started thinking about it, and I made a comment in a video we did, and it pissed a lot of people off. I said, just because you love shooting guns doesn't mean that you love freedom, or that you are a proliferator of the Bill of Rights and educating people on how that works. Blowing shit up in your backyard is not directly analogous to that. And like, hey, let's talk about that. And it was like crickets, Well,
I could see that. I can, because again, on a certain level, a lot of these people that you're referencing, who I believe I know who you're talking about, like the genre that you're referencing, they're there because they have created a following. And one of the problems is that they do not want to do anything that could jeopardize that following, because now they've turned their success into a cash production.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I sympathize with them in some respects. It's kind of like you got to walk a fine line. I don't feel like having discussions and opinions that vary is a bad thing. One of the things that I will always tell people is like we could do ourselves so much good if we had an organization that would actually sit down and review for all of our members, all of our community, the proper etiquette for having a reasonable debate. Like how to debate, like going back to high school, like get a high school teacher who taught debate and actually have him come into our industry and teach everybody how to do this. Because, it's like what I was like, the rules apply to both sides. So when we talk about like the idea of persuasion versus force, like you need to be able to persuade me to change my viewpoint. Otherwise you'll have to force me. Well, guess what? They're thinking the same thing.
Right.
They're down with the same kind of, modal, if you will. So we do not want to get to that point. We do not want to see a civil war in this current state. I don't think people appreciate, like people are willing, like the other side is willing to go there. We have got to be smarter and realize what that means. They don't know what that means. They have no clue what that means. They think they know, but they don't have a clue because they've never seen war. They've never seen violence. They've never seen the cost that has, especially on our home soil. They're a bunch of idiots.
It's
right?
kind of like a sexy.
It is. It's quick. It's easy.
Fantasy. Yeah, it's easy to shoot the bad guy versus do the hard work of legislation and communication.
Right. And the thing that I try to get across to people these days is that like we have to step up into the leadership roles, whether you are a leader or not. You have to step up and you have to represent the community as a large, not just the gun industry, but freedom in general. And you have to set the example for these other folks. And I've done it before where I've had, unpleasant conversations with people because they're not willing to engage with you in a reasonable debate. They just can't for whatever reason. And I've learned something too. It's like, we've always relied on facts. Like we want to talk about facts. Like anytime some sort of liberal media publish, whenever they publish something, it's typically just filled with, so much wrong that we're quick to point out factually. And what we have to really start to realize is that we cannot change their minds with facts.
Yeah,
we're not going to change their minds with facts. We're at an impasse in a sense. I mean, we have to rely on facts for our own development of our perspectives. We have to do that. But then what we have to do is we have to be able to sit down and have conversations with these people. And that is not easy. That is hard.
Powerful stuff.
Well, it is. I mean, the thing that I tell people is that when you want to sit down and engage with somebody that has diametrically opposing views, the best thing that you can do is, again, set the example. You sit there and you talk to them. You're like, hey, Mickey, I want to have this conversation. I know that we don't agree on this, but here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to acknowledge that I could be wrong in my viewpoint. And what I'm expecting from you is you to be able to articulate a good argument for why I would want to change my viewpoint. And I'm going to do the same thing, right? And if you can present to me a very good argument that is not based on emotions and feelings, but is actually based on substantial stuff. Like if you were to sit there and take your child in for a major surgical procedure, I need you to have that mindset about how we're going to engage. Because that's what I need from you. I need you to have that same kind of mindset. And if we can sit down at the table and do that, we may not change each other's minds, but we're going to have a better understanding of the other person's point of view. And that's the first step. That's what we haven't been doing.
That's exactly what it needs. That is how I, when engaging in discussions on very hot button issues like gun rights. My goal is always, I don't want you to agree with me. I just want you to understand that it's okay for me to think this way.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I approach it. Like if you want to worship a frog, I'm okay with that, and I'm not gonna judge you. I mean, literally, I know somebody that like worships frogs, but just if they wanted to explain it to me, like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm not going to make it wrong or try to put you down. But I have a family member. Super liberal in the sense that we use that they are rabidly anti-gun, which to me is rabidly anti-freedom. And this person recently had an incident. I don't want to say too much because I don't want somebody to know who I'm talking about, but he had an incident that he was almost a victim of some very bad violence. Like it could have easily gone to where he was injured gravely or dead. And thankfully it didn't go down that way. And I haven't yet talked to him because it's pretty fresh. I can tell there's some emotional trauma about what happened. But like, I want to talk to him and say, like, does that change your perspective on like where people like you or I come from? Not on just gun rights, but like why it is good to be trained to protect oneself from predation. And I'm not going to come at him like, ha, I told you so. But that's like a for you Christians, like Paul on the road to Damascus kind of a story where, they saw the light.
The light.
And
so it's funny because I've had a lot of those types of moments with a lot of people. And in our one of our very entry level classes, I will ask the audience, how many people in this audience know of somebody that have been the victim of a violent crime? And, just ask people to raise their hands, family member, spouse, loved one, coworker, whoever the case might be. And it's actually scary to see how many people actually will raise their hands and show that. And I'm like, okay, so we can all agree that violence is out there no matter what. Right. And really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create, like what we want the victim selection process to not select our family members or ourselves. We want the victim selection process to select somebody else. And so what we have to do in this process is we have to create more of a hard target personality, right? And we talk about that in some of our classes. And the reason why I bring this up was I was having this conversation, well, not conversation, but when my oldest son was very young and my young son was a newborn, I got up early one morning, grabbed my older son, we got together, we took off, and we went and had breakfast together. And he was maybe 2 years old. And we go into this little restaurant. I lived in a really small town at this time, and it had this beautiful window view of our downtown square, which we had a small little county suite. It was really nice. And in the booth right across from us was this lady sitting by herself. Well, this gentleman walking down the street was openly carrying, and he had like a tactical thigh rig on. Now, granted, I don't condone that or support that or encourage that, but it's his right. So, was
it normal where you lived at the time to see such a thing?
It was legal. I don't know about normal. Yeah, I mean,
parts of the country where you see that stuff.
Yeah, it's normal. It's not like I don't want to necessarily say it's normal because I mean there was a part in our history where that was normal. People walked around with guns. That was normal.
What I meant, like in.
No, I know what you meant. No, I do. Like, is that something that you see often? And no, it's not. I'm going to be honest, it's not. But it was his legal right, so he wasn't doing anything wrong. Then the lady started to she gasped, and then she started to laugh, and I started laughing. Because I was laughing at her. She didn't realize that. She kind of looks over the booth and starts to laugh with me. And she's like, right, it's funny, right? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm sorry. You misunderstood. I was actually laughing at you. And she's like, why? And I was like, well, because you find that offensive, and you probably don't feel very favorably towards, self-defense and protecting yourself. I mean, I don't know that guy. I don't know who he is or why he's doing that. I wouldn't do that. But here's what I know. If a violent predator was looking at you and looking at now my ex-wife, he's going to choose you because you're an easier target. My ex-wife is a hard target. She's not going to give that, the way that you handled that situation led me to believe that you are exactly the type of person that would be high on the victim selection list, and my ex-wife would be low. So I appreciate that. And this is what I was trying to tell her. I'm like, listen, I don't have anything against that. I'm totally fine with it. That's great. Knock it out of the park, however you want to be. Because honestly, I need people like you to exist so that violent predators will choose you and not other people.
It's a tough reality.
Oh, she did not like that. I mean, I might have been a little brash in my comment about how I need you in this sense to be the victim, but it's the truth.
Knowing now all these years later, would you have approached it the same way? Would you maybe have said
probably
nothing?
No, probably. Yeah. I might have had more tact. I would say that as I've grown older, I've grown wiser, but I don't really think that's true. But I do feel like I probably would have had a little bit more tact. I have more words in my vocabulary now. So
I've definitely learned to keep my mouth shut a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying there. Like, yes, I do find myself to be a lot more even-keeled these days. Like things will not set me off like they did back when I was younger. But there's a lot more at stake. Like when I was younger, I was single. I had, the worst thing about my career was I was worried that I was going to get in trouble and I wasn't going to be able to deploy. That was it. I'm like, I didn't care what I did. The only thing I didn't want to do was do anything that would get me in trouble that would prevent me from deploying. I mean, so much that I almost went fisticuffs with my dentist because he wanted to pull my wisdom teeth out, which would have potentially put me on a no-fly list, which would have meant I couldn't have deployed like 3 days later with my platoon going down range. I'm like, no, you're not taking my teeth out. I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to let you do it. He's like, well, you don't have a choice. I'm like, the I do. You're going to try to climb on top of me and pull these teeth out? Good luck there, dude.
They'll be there when I get home.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't want to do anything that we could compromise or jeopardize that because that was my existence at the time. That was the purpose of my life. That was what I was there for. Why would I do something stupid and prevent me from being able to do that?
Mm-hmm. So now you've changed tacks a little bit. Quite a bit. Yeah. Quite a bit,
I would say. Actually, yeah, I'm a little bit smarter about that. You talk to some of my older teammates. Yeah.
They can't believe it. I actually, you and I have talked before and communicated, and I'm pleasantly surprised at your thoughtfulness about some of these topics. I'm going to have to get into one of your classes. I would like to see what you're doing, so I can sharpshoot it. But
of course,
yeah. By that I mean like take your shit. That's just a joke. That's just a joke. What I found after well over 1,000 hours of instruction and private training, nobody's got any capital that the next guy doesn't have. It's just the method of delivery. And
well, that's what I was saying. The bullet comes out the barrel the same way. What we do differently is that we hold everybody to a standard. I tell people when you come out on the firing line, the first thing that you need to realize is that every round you fire is a graded round. Everything you do. I'm not going to tell you. I do kind of give you a heads up. Okay, this is actually a test or a graded evolution. But the problem is that if I forget, or if we're just busy and hurried and I don't say it, somebody's going to give me this you didn't tell me. Exactly. So now what I tell people every day, the first morning of every day of every class, is I need you to anticipate and expect that every round you fire is a graded round. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on people. But that's the reality too. The other thing that people don't like about our class,
I would have tried harder had I known.
Exactly. I'm like, that's such a douchey response. Don't even get me, you should hear some of the excuses that I've heard. Oh my God, it's hilarious. I should write a book about that. But Then the second thing I tell people is that a shot in the white. So we have these special targets that we have made for us, and there's a silhouette, and then there's the actual guy, and then there's the white, the white border, if you will. So we call that, if you put a shot in the white, that's a DQ. And that means that's an automatic failure on that drill or whatever that evolution was.
You completely missed the whole target if you're in the white.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason for that is because we're trying to put, and this is what I was reading an article earlier today, and they're talking about what we're doing wrong in concealed carry or the shooting world. And I'm like, what we're doing wrong? We're not holding people accountable. Don't give me this bullshit. I don't care about what this, that's not important. What's important is that we as an industry are not holding students accountable for their performance.
I agree.
And if we were to hold people accountable for performance, a lot of this stuff would go away, because then what you're going to find number one, people that are quick to badmouth performance standards are simply because they don't know how to institute performance standards. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. And then second, they can't hold their student base to these standards because they themselves either don't know how to do it or can't do it. So it like the first thing we tell people is that every shot you fired, you need to put in context that you're firing this shot in self-defense. Everything that we do in a training class is with the idea that it's in self-defense. So if you miss a shot, that means that you are legally responsible for the final resting place of that shot. And if it hit an innocent bystander that's injured, that's bad. If it hit an innocent bystander that's killed, buddy, there's nothing you can do to erase that. You could have taken down a ISIS hit squad and with like perfect headshots, and you could be sitting there like, getting ready to do shaving ads, and you shot little Susie down the road and nobody cares, and you're going to jail, and you're going to jail. So
do you shoot your drills or standards in your class?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every time I can, I will. I demonstrate everything whenever it's a graded evolution. I mean, most of the time the graded evolutions are not like what you might be thinking. The graded evolutions are just like when we introduce a skill, there's always a grade assigned to it. So I'm expecting you to there's like self-management of the training, meaning that I will tell you what my expectations are. I'll tell you what your grade point is that you need to maintain, and I'll tell you how to do that. And then you're kind of on your own. And then there'll be like a pop quiz that we'll take that will look to see how you did. How did you do? Because one of the things that I find is that for people to learn, they have to fail. If they're not willing to fail, if they're not willing to practice, and this is the other thing, this is why I hate stuff like that I was reading about. Let's just focus on this stuff. Then you're not practicing what you're not good at.
Just so that I and the listeners and viewers understand, what was the context of the article? What were the things that this author was suggesting are problematic?
Let me think. Well, it was just like the problem that I had with it was the reliance on their premise was on the reliance of the closed circuit TV information that they were getting and how they were data mining that and using that to formulate their opinions.
So we only need to be able to place 3 shots into a target 4 feet away because the data shows that most violent attackers stop in X amount.
It's true. And this is the problem. Like, okay, so we could do that.
I'm saying, is that what the data was?
Yeah, that's kind of where they were going. Yes,
no reason
exactly.
To be able to make a headshot at 25 yards because,
or no reason to be able to do. It's not. And the idea, the problem that I had, and I agree with some of the things there because I do feel like there are some things that we probably don't need to be doing. But when I see people that can't meet a performance standard and they're out there doing Mel Gibson roles to try to, in some cool guy class and whatever the case might be, it's like, all right, dude, you probably don't need that. You probably just need a good marksmanship class, understand what it means to actually place a shot on demand. And then after that, there are 20 core skills with a pistol. What foundational skills? Once you've learned those foundational skills, what the purpose behind that is that now you're placed in a situation that there's no way for us to replicate any type of shooting that's out there, because the moment we try to replicate that, something else over here happens, and now we're divergent. So what we need to try to do is create enough of we need to create enough of these little bridges that you can use your brain to solve the problem and bridge that gap. You have enough training that you're familiar with it enough to where you can make the leap, and it's not perfect. It's not exactly like it happened in class, but it's close enough to where you can actually make the leap and get it done. And that's what we try to do, is like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to at least have enough information, enough training to where you can make those jumps, those gaps.
I dig it. Yeah. I have seen in the last 2 years I want to go back a minute. You're talking about 2001, you started training. In 2001, I remember looking for some people that did like courses for a guy like me. Hashtag not a Navy SEAL, not an action guy. And, I've done like martial arts and stuff my whole life. I'm a carpenter by trade. So I always tell Navy SEALs, like, come do real man's work for a month straight in Chicago. And we'll see what you're made of. But as a joke, kind of a joke, kind of not. At that time, 15, 18 years ago, 20 years ago, there was, like you said, there were guys like Jim Cirillo, who's since passed away, and Mas Ayub and dudes like that, like you and Pat, like Pat Mack, who's been down by you recently.
Yeah.
Nobody knew these people's names. And the few dudes I knew, one of them, my mentor, Bob Housingay, who's a contemporary of Mas's, you had to, if you weren't a cop, you had to send him a letter of good character with a signature from a local judge, sheriff, or state's attorney. Now, do the PayPal form, and I'm going to go learn whatever you got to do. And this was the point I was going to make. So now there's so many dudes trying to pass on something that sets them apart. I've gone to so many classes where it's like the structure is how fast can you shoot at like very large targets. And all the guys I've ever trained with that have actually had to fire a weapon in violence are, I would say 99% of the time, hypercritical about accuracy. Like old Green Berets and Frogmen, B8s at 25 yards. And I hear a joke the other day, I ain't about that B8 life. Somebody said it. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, you don't want to be able to hit small targets far away? Like that's boring to you?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I completely agree. The way that we talk about it is like our, marksmanship is king on the battlefield. And, it doesn't, to caveat that, a lot of times what I'll say is, you have to, like, one of the marketing slogans that we had, which still makes, it's still valid to this day, was, what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach you to suck less than the bad guy. That goal is to teach you to suck less. Now that's a very broad definition of sorts, but what we're trying to do is we are trying to perfect your marksmanship skills. And what we're trying to do is we, like, in our another point on our classes is our target zones. There's what we call the JV target zones is 8-inch and 4-inch. And if you cut 8-inch for the chest, 4-inch for the face, if you cut the line, it's considered a miss, and that gets people really butthurt. I mean, it's like,
so you want it all in or nothing.
That's it. It's got to be. It's either all in or it's a miss. It's that simple. And people get all butthurt. Well, everybody lets you do it like this. I'm like, okay, well, fine. Go to that class. You're not at that class. You're in my class, and this is how it works. And the reason for that is very simple. I remind people there is nobody trying to kill you right now. There's nobody trying to kill you. So this standard of accuracy, which is 8 inches or less, is based around peacetime conditions. And what we know is under combat conditions, you're going to see your technique unravel. It's going to get sloppy. It's going to get messy. There's a lot of variables that we can't plan for. And when I've talked to my teammates and even guys outside of my community and other communities, one of the things that we all agree is that our marksmanship standards are going to degrade under combat conditions. How much they degrade, a figure that everybody seems comfortable with is 50%.
Damn.
Yeah, 50%. So that means that if you're guaranteeing 8 inches in peacetime, 12 inches in combat. And 12 inches on a man-sized target is great. That's awesome. I mean, Jesus, you're fine. That's the reason why. Yeah, exactly. That's the reason why we're so tough on standards. It's because nobody is trying to kill you. Get over it. Be better than your excuses. That's the other thing that pisses me off is like, I don't want to hear excuse. Don't give me an excuse. You missed a target. Figure out why you missed so that you don't miss again.
Yeah.
Right? Take it on board. Yeah. Oh, it's so close to being in. I'm like, I'm sorry. Let's reword that statement. How do you want to say that to me? It's the miss. Yeah. Now stop wasting my time.
I like you. You're like my older, sexy brother with the Superman. My kids will tell you, I say excuses are for homeless people and drunkards. And somebody one time told me, like, there's homeless people that don't want to be. And it's like, all right, maybe I should say bums. So I need to change it to bums and drunk. And like, what's a fuck? Like, I don't care.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's like, that's a
what's so funny, when I give my opening monologue, if you will, that I go into the top 3 things that have led to our success. And, one of the things is that we're diehards on metrics. We collect so many metrics. And I tell people I can, everything we're going to do in number 1, everything we're going to be doing over the next couple of days is based off battlefield experience. My experience, the rest of my staff, the community at large, right? We're taking that information, we're providing it to you. Number 2, everything that we're going to be doing is based on performance standards. So I don't care what it is that you're doing. If you're meeting performance standards, I don't care how you do it. I don't care. Do it however you want to do it. If you meet the standards, you meet the standards. Let's move on. We got more shit to do.
I'm assuming that you provide them framework with which
yeah.
you would assume that they will be better apt to achieve standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything it's laid out for them. It's everything, because I believe the best way to do that is to manage their expectations. I will set out my expectations. This is what I expect from you, and I believe that you are capable of making this. That's the reason why you're in this class. So we're gonna move on this journey together, and you're gonna be successful in this. The third point that I bring up is I don't care. I don't care at all. Don't come to me with an excuse. The moment you start to come up to me and say, "Oh, well, blah blah," what I say to people is, like, in my head, I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner. I'm thinking about maybe the gym. What can I do at the gym today? I'm thinking about anything that will get me out of this conversation, because I don't want to hear your excuse. If I have to listen to it, I'm going to go insane. And
it begs the question of why they're actually there.
That's the other thing.
Better, or to impress me, Jeff Gonzales?
And I tell people, it's like when you walk into a gym, and you think, particularly, when I travel, I hit a lot of CrossFit gyms, and I travel over the country, and I'm very fortunate to do that. And one of the things that I tell people is, when I walk into a CrossFit gym, I'm not there to compete against anybody. I'm there to improve, and I'm there to improve myself.
Yeah.
And so I try to get across to some of these guys. When I would tell guys, when I was sending guys out to these various schools and whatnot, I would tell them, I was like, listen, your number 1 job is number 1 to represent the Navy, represent the special warfare. But the other thing that you're there to do is you're there to increase your lethality on the battlefield. I don't care how that instructor is going to do it. You listen to what it is. You bring that information back. We will decide as a unit whether or not that's valuable for us or not. So if he tells you to stand on your head and do this, you stand on your head and do it. I don't care. If he tells you to wear a pink tutu, bring that pink tutu home, because I want to see you in it. It's like your job, my job is to increase your lethality on the battlefield. It's that simple. Get out of your own. Stop being the impediment to your success.
I like that. I'm gonna write that one down. That might be a good title for this podcast. Would you share a couple of your standards?
Sure. So here's the thing. Standards are kind of like if you do a 2-day class, if you do our combative pistol 2 class, you'll go through. I think we have 9 graded evolutions in that class that we actually will use for scoring purposes, but everything else has a grade assigned with it. So let's see, pistol CP2. What do you do in there that's a good thing for everybody? Oh, one of the drills that I really, really like, actually it's not in a CP2 drill, but one of my favorite drills is, it's called a 5-second standard.
Okay.
What we do is you start at the 3-yard line, and you will fire 5 rounds to the face. And you have 5 seconds to do it. That's it. All right, 5 rounds to the face.
That's a 4-inch circle?
Yep, 4-inch circle at 5. Or at the 3, sorry. And you're going to, so this drill has the same part time. It's 5 seconds for everything, and it's 5 rounds for all 4 yard lines. So there's 4 stages. So stage 1 is at the 3, it's 5 rounds to the face. You step back to the 5. Now here's the thing. You can only step back to the 5 if you met the standard. So if you miss a shot or you're over par, you're done.
Okay.
So supposing that you make it past the 3, you go to the 5. And at the 5 yard line, it's 5 rounds to the chest, strong hand only. If you make that, you move to the 7. And at the 7, it's a 4-and-1 drill. So 4 to the chest, 1 to the face. And if you make that, you go back to the 10, and it's 5 rounds to the body.
I'm making notes here. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's scalable. We do that a lot of times. A lot of times people will take a stab at that without the part-time. And just 100% accuracy, because that's the thing. It's 100% accuracy. Can't miss in that drill. So you got to be able to manage I mean, the part times are they're not challenging, to be honest. I don't think they're challenging. Let me back up. Yes, they're challenging, but I don't feel like they're not within people's skill set. Like if you're coming to that class, that part time is within your ability. what the problem that I see a lot of times is number one, people don't train to shoot fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we talk about this early on. Marksmanship is king on the battlefield. Right. So once we have developed our marksmanship skills, the next thing we have to do is we have to move those marksmanship skills as fast as humanly possible without compromising our accuracy. So once you understand what marksmanship is all about, the next thing is getting rid of all the junk, get rid of all the crap, unnecessary movement, inefficiency, wherever it is, get rid of it. And you're by proxy going to be faster. And the next thing after that is actually moving your body at a faster rate. The problem a lot of times is people try to move fast first. So we talk about developing skills at 3 different levels. So the first level is what we call the task level, right? That's up here. The second level is what we call the subtask level. That's below. And then below the subtask level is a microtask level. So in the beginner level classes, our beginner and intermediate level classes, we do just about everything down here at the microtask, and then a little bit of subtask. And the reason behind that is that I've got to train you to understand exactly what is required for you to get a hit. I know you do a lot of fitness stuff. So if I'm going to be successful at an 80% lift of one of my snatches, I have to do everything perfect. I can't have an error. If I have an error, I'm going to miss. With that much weight, 80% of my max, the smallest error is going to be a misrep or an injury.
Yeah.
Okay. So same principle applies. Same principle applies here. If we're building technique, we have to build that technique so it's flawless. If it's flawless, then as soon as I ramp up the speed, or in other words, adding weight, as soon as I ramp up the speed, that's where we're going to start to see where your limits of performance are going to be. And then as soon as we figure out where your limits of performance are going to be, we're going to figure out why they're there. Because each person has different reasons for why they're not moving to the next level. And we'll sit down. That's one of the things that we do better than anybody in the industry is diagnostics. Sitting down and actually watching a shooter and actually helping the shooter get to that next level.
I dig
whatever that next level is. Yeah.
Yeah. The nuances. How are they gaining a grip on the gun? How are they accessing a magazine, or et cetera, et cetera? All of those.
I can make the Japanese look really inefficient.
That is in my opinion, the best way to go faster. Once you know what you're doing is to remove all of the excess waste.
That's it, man. Yeah. That's because it's like, here's another great metaphor. The fitness world, like I use a lot of analogies and transitions from 2 industries. The fitness industry and the race car driving industry, or defensive driving, what we did overseas kind of stuff. Because there's so many principles that apply in the shooting world, right? For instance, a kettlebell swing. You can only cycle a kettlebell swing so fast. You can't increase the speed per se. It's only going to move so fast because it's a weighted movement. It's a weighted object that you're moving through space. It can only move so fast. If you wanted to move it, like we've done this so many times, you're just not going to do it to the point where you're going to get it faster. What you've got to be able to do is do it to where you can be the most efficient at moving that kettlebell through space. And as soon as you can do it the most efficient, the next thing we're looking for is your overall time. So let's just say you got it's a 4-time 100 kettlebell swings at like 54 pounds. Okay, so 100 kettlebell swings. All right, let's get it on. Let's see how we can do that. So at a certain point, what you're going to learn, like maybe the first time you attempted this took you 10 minutes, right? You set the bell down like 6 times, 8 times, whatever it was. So what we got to figure out is, why did you have to set the bell down? What caused you to set the bell down? All right, well, grip strength. Okay, well, first, that's one area that we're going to work on. We're going to work and improve from grip strength. Then after we've worked on grip strength, you still set the bell down 4 times. Why? Well, because your cardio is not there to keep moving that weight through space. All right, so now we got to do something that's unrelated to this, that's going to help build your cardio so that you're going to be able to perform better when it comes to this. Now you set the bell down twice. Okay, well, why'd you set it down twice? Well, what I found is that if I try to hold onto the kettlebell for all 100 reps, I'm not going to be as fast as if I set it down halfway through it, take a quick break, and get back on it. That's the type of learning that we're looking for right there.
I dig it.
Yeah,
I dig it. One of the things I've been personally musing on as of the last year, so I've spent thousands of dollars. I can't even say how many hundreds of thousands of rounds in the last decade shooting. And then like recently I'm looking at some training notes and I'm thinking, all right, so like what's my goal? And like, what am I doing? Anything that's in contrary manner to that goal? Yeah. And in the context of like, why am I doing all this training? Like for me, it's so that I can be a better protector of my family. Yeah. That's really it. Like is it fun to go to the range and like outshoot a buddy or something? Yes. Most of my friends are master and grandmaster level shooters. I'm not willing. I will not dedicate my time to be. I don't have it.
I get it too, man.
So I know that's not going to happen. So I think about like, should I go to a class where I'm working with nods on transitioning from a rifle to a pistol? Like, is that any supportive of my goal? It's not bad. It's fun.
Sure.
For me, it's like, is
it relative?
Yeah. And so like, that's a waste of time. I'd rather go put a 3x5 note card on the target and do 2-shot drills and, you know, be able to hit that reliably in whatever time frame I decide to do it in.
I could not agree with you more there. So we do this drill called baselines, and baselines are so valuable, so hugely important. And basically what a baseline is, it's your on command performance. Like we'll see a lot of guys that'll post up these crazy times, crazy videos. And first of all, it's like all bullshit. It's like Mike.
Give me an example.
Well, shit, I don't know. Just watch any of them.
You don't have to say a person, but like just somebody setting up some crazy drill.
So here's Mike Pannone and I were sitting down. We were having lunch together, or dinner together. I don't know when it was. It was a while back again. December. Actually, it was in December. And then I was out in Tucson, so we sat down for dinner and we were talking. And he has a great saying. It's like, you know, you're watching these videos, and what you're not seeing is you're not seeing the hundreds of times or hundreds of attempts to make that drill look as good as it is published. Right. And because if you know, and Mike is an exceptional shooter.
Yeah, he's a master class.
Yeah, oh man, he's an exceptional shooter. And so when I hear somebody like Mike say that, it's like, I mean, I knew it beforehand, but it's like, it's reassuring. It's like, oh my God, yes, right? I mean, they practice and practice and practice, and then they get the video just right, so they can just show just the good stuff, what it looks like. It's like social media. Everybody's only putting on what they look good at, not necessarily what they, you know, when they wake up in the morning with no makeup or, you know, hairs a strewn and all that other shit. So, what a baseline is, a good example of baseline is like, let's just take a 1-round drill. We're going to take a 1-round drill, and we're going to do this 1-round drill at the 7-yard line versus an 8-inch target. Okay. So what you're going to do is you do this cold. So no warm-ups. Preferably, I would like for you not to have done any range time or dry fire for 72 hours. So very cold. You're going to go out there and you're going to shoot that 1-round drill. Well, let's say from the ready. Okay. You'll use the timer to initiate your movement. You'll record the time as long as you got a hit. Okay, so you have 10 attempts to get 7 perfect hits. Okay, so let's just say it took you 9 attempts to get 7 hits. So that meant you got 2 misses, right? And let's just say that you had whatever, you know, arbitrary times, you know, they range from like 1.2 to 3.8, right? That was the spread. So you're going to take that 1.2 and you're going to take that 3.8, you're going to discard them, and you're going to average the remaining 5 shots. Okay? That becomes your par time. Let's just say that's 2.2. So what that means is that it takes you exactly 2.2 seconds to guarantee a hit. So what we tell people in our classes, only shoot as fast as you can guarantee a hit. Simple. That's it. Shoot as fast as you possibly can, but with the understanding that you're only shooting as fast as you can guarantee that hit. 2.2 seconds is how fast it takes you to guarantee that hit. All right? So now that we have that time, now you take it to the range and you rep it out. You set 2.2 in your timer, and now you're not trying to beat it. That's the mistake that people make. Because what 2.2 is it was the exact amount of time for you to do everything perfectly. Right? So you need to rep that out over and over and over. So what you do is you penalize yourself if you're faster than 0.2 or slower than 0.2. Right? So you basically got like a 5-second window there. You can be 0.2 slower, or I'm sorry, 0.5 of a second. 0.2 slower, 0.2 faster. But ideally, you want to be right at 2.2. So when you can rep that out, and you said this earlier, you said it, I don't think you realize how important it is, but it was consistency. And consistency.
How do you know that I didn't realize how important what I said was?
Well, you said it without the context that I'm trying to use it as. So I don't think you realize how important it was to this conversation. But consistency is so ridiculously important, because that's what you're going to be able to do on the streets. That's what you can guarantee. So 2.2, you rep that out. Every time you go to the range, you rep it out. 2.2, 2.2, 2.2, you know, and you're on your game at 2.2. Now, when you get to a point when you're on your game at 2.2 and you can do it in your sleep without even making, you know, without just like, oh, it's so boring. At that point, it's time to retest. You go back, you reshoot your baselines. And what you find now is you're at 1.9. Your new baseline is 1.9. Why are you at 1.9? It's very simple. What you had done is at 2.2 was the amount of time that it took for you in your mind's eye to see everything unfold correctly. And now you just became so efficient at doing everything correctly at 2.2 that you actually are now more efficient.
Yeah.
And so now your time is 1.9. But here's the rub. People try to shoot that baseline fast. And you are not permitted to generate more than 3 misses. If you get more than 3 misses, you're done. There's no baseline for you. Because at that point, we're training. We're not evaluating your raw skill, you're training. So that's a hard thing for people to do. So when I see the industry get all wrapped up in whatever, I'll go and do a baseline for it and be like, okay, here's the deal. Like a recent one that I'm doing is comparing the actual draw stroke from conceal, or actually not from conceal, but from strong side versus appendix, what the actual draw stroke speeds are.
Dude, we're twinsies. I've been playing with that in dry fire here late. Go on.
So,
I want to hear.
So what we did was we eliminated a few things, because here's what people get all but hurt about. First of all, I've been carrying appendix probably longer than most people have been in this industry. I first started doing it back in the 80s. I didn't even know what I was doing back then. So I don't care about the speed component that people get wrapped up in. It's not really relevant. What's relevant, the reason why appendix carry is valuable is because it allows so many different types of people to carry concealed well. That's the reason. It does a very good job of concealing the firearm, okay? So when I started doing this, I started doing baselines when I compared the two. And right now I've got like 15 reps of each, strong side and appendix. I've got like 3 different guns, 3 different holsters. The criterion was you had to, first of all, it was not concealed, so it was tucked in, and you had to start with your hands on your head. And a big argument that a lot of people make for appendix is that your hands naturally lie in the front of your body. Well, that is incorrect. They do not naturally lie there. If they naturally lie there, it's because you have no range of motion. You have no mobility in your upper body. Yeah. That's the only reason why that would be there. So that's not something that we want to congratulate people on. All right. You have an overdeveloped pectoral region, which means that you need to actually do something to help yourself out. Right. So, once we eliminate a lot of these things and we're just looking at the raw data, the actual speed of movement from the head down to the appendix, from the head down to the strong side, eliminate all these other craziness, what I'm finding is they're not different. There's not that much of a difference in time. Mm-hmm. Now, I've had some good days and I've had some bad days. I had some good days where I was smoking, man. My times were really fast and really good. And I had some other days that I was just like not into it, whatever the case might be. So I have a good collection of data. That data is showing me that I've done it with Glock 19, Glock 17, SIG 320, M&P. I've done it with different holster brands, everything from Raven to let's see. I did one with a Spencer Keepers holster. I did it with some Bravo Concealment. Holsters. Yeah, I did it with Bravo Concealment. Just a lot of different holsters, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to evaluate objectively and not bring in any personal bias. So, and what I'm learning is that the times are not like. This is why baselines are valuable, because it's not how fast you might be able to do it. It's how fast you can consistently do it. And this is where people really get all wrapped around the axle. It's like, all right, dude, so great. You did a fucking sub 1 second draw. Fantastic. That's awesome. Right? Let's see you do it in a baseline. Because as soon as you're at that speed, moving it at that speed, unless your name starts with Rob and ends with Latham, it's probably not going to happen on a consistent basis. You're not going to be able to replicate that. Consistency again comes in. You're not going to be able to do that. Here's the other rub with that. If you're trying to do a sub 1 second draw, the amount of maintenance it's going to take for you to maintain that, unrealistic. The average person is not going to do it. Yet people are chasing that, right? It's like a 500-pound deadlift. You might get to like the time that it takes for you to get to that deadlift might be 12 to 18 months. You get to that 500 deadlift, good programming, good nutrition, good rest, good mobility work, and you get to 500-pound deadlift. Now that you're there, what you realize is that all of your other lifts were sacrificed for you to get to that 500-pound deadlift. Your Olympic lifts, your snatch, your clean and jerks, all your shit, you're done. Your back squat, can't do anything without breaking your back right now, right? Overhead presses, not even there anymore. You've lost so much terrain on all those other things because you're trying to maintain that 500 deadlift. So I tell people I'm more inclined to look at somebody that can consistently make those draws, which is why baselines are so important. So not only do we use them for training, we use them to evaluate, we use them in all different types of settings, but I'm going to release those numbers here pretty soon. It's the first time I've actually talked about it because most of the time people just get, So I wanted to have good depth of numbers to talk from. I've had a few other shooters shoot it just so I can kind of get a comparison. But the problem is that I'd have to do a lot with that other shooter to get good collection of data, not just one or two. I'd have to do it like 3 to 5 times with that shooter to get for them to be valuable. For us to know for sure.
I'd like to see that, what you're using as baseline numbers. And did you shoot that from concealment as well, or just open?
No. So it was open. So the shirt was tucked in. Target was a 6-inch target at 10 yards. That's the other thing, was at 10 yards. Why 10 yards? Well, because your marksmanship skills at speed, really right there, that's the threshold. For you to have a good balance between speed and accuracy, 10 is really it. 7 and in, it's like you're lucky most of the time. You're shooting so fast, but when you're held accountable, so again, 6-inch target, which is a lot smaller than most people are used to shooting, and you're shooting at the 10-yard line, you now have to slow your shooting time down just enough to make sure that you make those hits, because if you don't make those hits, the baseline is void. It's not
right. You're not getting any data that's usable.
Nope, not at all.
Slinging lead into the trap or berm.
Right.
I asked you earlier about you shooting your own standards because I have been, and I'm not going to call anybody out, guys that I would drink beer with that are my friends, but I've been in courses with dudes that are big name guys, and I have seen that in the last 2 or 3 years, half of these guys can't make their own times. And then they're like, making excuses. And I mean, we all have bad days. I did a class a couple years ago where I hadn't been training enough and hadn't been sleeping enough, and I was having a hard time delivering some of the material. Like, okay, that happens, but a bunch of this stuff was high speed related, large target zones, and the material is like they're coming up with data to present the material as the end all be all, and then like accuracy goes out the window. One of them actually said, he laughed and made a joke, "I bet you guys want to slow down and try to get your hits." And I thought, no, I just want to throw ammo wherever, like, because I can't, I can't go any faster than I'm going. Like, it's just like, what sense does that make? What is the purpose of this?
Well, so there's 2 points to this. All right. The first point is that you should be able to set the standards. You should be able to demonstrate those standards. I'm coming to an understanding of what my limitations are, in the sense that as I'm getting older, there's going to come a time when I can no longer meet those same standards. And it's not because it's just, I'm not able to get back to those same heavy lifts. I'm not able to do that as much as I'd like to. The cost is too heavy. I'm not willing to take that cost on. For me to try to maintain that, you were talking about how you don't want to shoot with some of these friends of yours because they're master class shooters, and you just don't want to invest that time to get to that level.
I don't want to shoot with them. I shoot with them a lot. I'm just not going to. I know I'm not going to excel past top
exactly.
shooters in the nation.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like you value that, and so I do feel like you need to demonstrate. You demonstrating to the students is super important, primarily because it's a learning process. Many students learn by observing. There's 4 different ways of learning. You can either read, you can either watch, you can either do, or you can either listen. Right. So those are like the 4 modals. As an instructor, you need to be able to, you have to, that's what I talk about, connecting with the students. You need to be able to connect with the students so you can figure out what kind of learning process they subscribe to. Some of them have, combinations and others, and some of them are they're on the fringes of each of these. So that's a whole other story. But you do want to demonstrate for them, because that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to set the standard for them. So when I'm demonstrating drills, I'm not demonstrating that real speeds. We have 3 different speeds. We have slow speed, half speed, and full speed. And so when I'm demonstrating, most of the time I'm demonstrating at the top end of half speed, the bottom end of full speed. And the reason being is that I need them to be able to see the details, the points. If they can't see that, they're not going to gain anything. At the same time, I love it when there's plenty of students that outshoot me. There's a couple guys that I have at the range that, I mean, you know, on any given day, depending on the drill, they're going to outshoot me. And I'm okay with that. I should say that my ego is okay with that. I'm not okay with that from, you know, a training perspective, in the sense that, okay, I probably need to be working more on this area. But I also realize that, you know, I'm running two companies, and I've got kids on the side. I've got, you know, my social life that I'm trying to do and all this other business. So
you just make a excuse.
Oh, no. What I'm doing is I'm making a point. There's a difference. There's a difference. But that's the point, is that I'm not willing to invest that same amount of time to get that same outcome. What I do tell people with regards to the demonstrations is that if you're as an instructor, if you're going to demonstrate, you need to be able to demonstrate it like very well. So, you know, for us, our instructor development, one of the things that washes instructors out or candidates out is their inability to shoot. I don't need you to blaze it down and do like a 3-second, you know, pie plate rack. I don't need you to do a 6-second El Presidente. What I need you to do is a 9-second El Pres every single time, and a 6-second pie plate rack every single time. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all I need. Because if you can do that, that's what matters to me, is that I can send you to one class over here, one class over here, one class over here. And I know that every time I go, you're going to do 9-second El Pres, you're going to do a 6-second pie plate rack every time. Mm-hmm. And that's what matters to me. So when we start setting up our like, most of the time, there's a lot of our standards are based around accuracy, not so much speed. There are several that are based on speed, and then there's several that are combinations of accuracy and speed. So a lot of it also kind of fluctuates with the types of standards that we're doing. Like most of the time, it's like to 80% or better. Okay. I need you to shoot a drill. I'll tell you how many rounds you can fire, how many rounds you can miss. This is your scoring target zone, which is 8 inches. You know, it can go from 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, and this is what you're held accountable for. And as long as you're maintaining that 80%, I'm happy.
You guys have been at this a long time. Have you made any big shifts in the material that you're teaching since 01, 02, 03?
Yes, but I don't think it's necessarily like, I'll tell you where we've evolved the most. We've evolved the most in the delivery of the information. The academic side of the house. Curriculum development, time management, podium presence. Those are areas where we have done a lot of changes, a lot of updates. Yes, there's some of the topics have changed a little bit. We've kind of like subdivided some classes. Like we used to do a 3-day class. Now we don't. Now we do only 2-day classes. So we took a 3-day class and we created basically like the level 2 and then the level 3, which has overlap between the two. So I mean, there's been some subjects that we have maybe downplayed a little bit, and there's been others that we kind of like really hit on more. But I don't think we've really changed that much. Like I remember reading something about somebody saying, "Oh, if you're not changing your curriculum every year, you're not learning." I'm like, yeah, what happened there was that you did such a piss poor job of developing your curriculum in the first place that you don't know what the you're doing. Yeah.
Sorry. No, it makes me laugh because I only ask, I watch guys. Somebody told me recently about a guy that's like a living legend in the training community that's getting up there in age. He's wrote many books. Some of the books are looked at as like Bibles, and they're like, that guy needs to hang it up. And I'm like, but why? Like, because he's taking money out of your pocket. They're like, that shit's dated.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you, I take personal offense to that because we have lost a lot of guys in our industry. We just, Ron Avery just passed away.
I posted about it.
Just passed away. And these are guys that, listen, the guys from my generation were guys that had more information about shooting and managing what we're doing right now than probably any other generation. There's a lot of great guys in this current flock of instructors that are outstanding. They've got great experience downrange. The problem is they're not good instructors. Those other guys were good instructors.
Yeah.
They knew how to make a good gunfighter, right? These guys are good gunfighters. And it's really hard to try to make good gunfighters when you don't know how to instruct that. That's the problem. So some of these guys, listen, I'm telling you what, man, you're an idiot if you don't want to go and train with some of these guys that are going to be, the guys that are like my good friends that, like you're just an idiot. Guys like Ken Hackathorn.
Or Dave Spalding.
Dave Spalding is another one. Absolutely. These are all guys, they're not going to do this forever. They're going to retire. They've lived a great life. They have done more. They've contributed more to this industry than most people will know. And somebody that says, I don't want to go train with that guy because he's dated, that's a big because this guy has learned more. He's forgotten more about this industry than you'll ever know.
Yeah.
And I regret so many things about, like, I knew Ron. We did a lot in the field of contracts, competing against one another. And I always respected him because of his phenomenal skill.
Yeah.
He was a good instructor, right? Other guys, I was so fortunate. I got a chance to work and consider them to be very close friends and mentors, Louis Auerbach and Pat Rogers.
Oh, wow.
These guys were, when I was a gun sight instructor, most of the time my job was to manage. I was there, like, basically I was the go-between. Like, I would translate for Louis and I was the student friend for Pat.
Wow.
That was, it was fantastic. I'm so grateful for that type of exposure. So what we have to realize is that there is that this information, while it can, like the internet, it's forever kind of thing. It's the art that is not. And that art that comes in the personalities, it comes in the experience, it comes in their delivery. And each of these guys has different ways of delivering it. I've sat and talked with each of these guys over, years, and can't say enough good things about them. And so my point is that if you're a true student of the art and you're out there to try to get training from a lot of different sources, if you have devalued or deselected these guys because they're dated or whatever the case might be, you're an idiot.
I agree with you. Yeah. I have had to calm myself before. Well, in one sense, because it's like, hey, some of those guys are my personal friends.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you're, you're insulting a personal friend. But then, just to your point, like, my Ford truck is way better than a Model T, but I wouldn't say Henry Ford's an asshole because he didn't make my truck. I'm not comparing those guys to being that old, but some of these guys are like the way we draw a gun, the modern holsters we use, all that shit.
The thing that I try to get across to people is, like, first of all, you are not going to know what you're going to learn in that class until you go to it. Mm-hmm. Now, you can be just this amazing shooter and have no faults, and you're going to do great. There's not going to be anything you gain from that. All right, great. Yeah. Fantastic. Good for you. But that's probably not the case. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I try to get across to people is that if you're a real student of the art, where you really try to take on as much information as possible, you're insatiable in that sense. You're going to try to get as much information from as many different sources as possible. And the value that you get from that is that you're seeing things from so many different perspectives. And what I tell people a lot of times, like, I'll have students come back through classes and they'll say, oh my God, that makes so much sense to me now. Why didn't you say it earlier? I'm like, well, I did say it in the same way every single time in every single class. The difference is that you weren't ready to hear it.
Didn't have enough exposure.
Right. So the way I say something, like, I might say the ABCs, okay, whatever, but you go to another class, it doesn't resonate with you. You don't understand ABCs, right? You go to another class and they say 1, 2, 3, and you're like, oh, this makes so much sense. So that's the value that you're going to get. You're going to get it from different perspectives and different experience levels that are going to help you to see the same thing. Because, like I was saying, the bullet comes out the barrel the same way. I sat down with Ken, did an interview with him at SHOT Show, and I'm like, first of all, I'm like starstruck. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I can't believe it. And then once we started going, I'm like, just like the wealth of knowledge that guy has. I'm like, oh my God, the conversations were so awesome. So awesome. I kind of, I really enjoyed that. It was probably one of the highlights of my trip out there, was to sit there and do that interview. I think it's somewhere, it's on the Firearms Training Association's website. Okay. I think we're going to be releasing all those videos here real soon. So I think it's well worth people's, we went on and on and on. I didn't even know how long we went on. And finally they're like, I'm like, oh, okay, well, we got to end it right here. Like 3 hours later, it wasn't that long, but it was funny still.
I am fortunate to be friends with Dave Harrington, Super Dave Harrington.
Yes, another guy, another one.
Yeah, I'll have dudes say some stuff like, that guy's out there. And like, well, like Dave says things. One of the first things that impressed me about Dave was he looked at me like, he's a big hulking man, and he goes,
for sure,
everything's important. Everything matters. Do the right thing at the right time every time. And I'm like I looked at him just like, okay, like, yes, sir. And we're chatting the other day, and we're talking about some of the stuff we're talking about now. And he goes, you do know, he said to me, he goes, if you have like your best year every year, you might touch like 2,000 lives directly on a firing line. He's like, even if you're out doing 10 to 20 classes a year. So he's like, get a calculator out, and I'm doing the math. And he's like, you might touch 3,000 lives in your entire career. That's it. Like there's like, so like make that shit count. And so why I'm going through this is guys like Hackathorn and these other gents like Dave, they might know the same information, but they've also seen how it was received by thousands of people. Some of these guys are old enough to be my father or even grandfather.
Yeah.
What I may look at in somebody's hand or somebody's eyes or body posture or their demeanor, they've seen it happen 1,000,000 times. I've seen it 10 times. So to them,
it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so true. I mean, like,
I got one more quick Dave Harrington story. And
please.
This was like when I realized what I just said, like the point about him. I was telling him about a problem I was having, a shooting issue. And he goes, say again what you just told me. And I described the issue. He goes, I need a shooting problem. And I'm like, well, I feel like it is, because like I'm trying to hit that and the round is impacting here. He goes, what do you want to do about it? I go, well, I want it to stop. And he goes, then stop doing it. And I'm like, and I thought like, well, this guy doesn't know shit. I'm like, he can't, but he knew. He goes, look, do you know how to hold the gun? Yes, sir. Do you know how to press the trigger? Yes, sir. Do you know how to align the sights? Yes, sir. He goes, well, then do it. He goes, you're doing something else. He goes, that's what you want. He goes, we want me to like rub you. And like, he had his way of saying it, but like he had seen enough about me. Like Mickey knows how to do it. He's just not doing it, or something in his subconscious is.
Yeah.
And it was that simple. And he figured, like, I asked him about that later. He goes, look, if you didn't know what you were doing, I would have sat there and showed you, like, do this, do that, whatever.
Yeah.
But he just weren't doing it, and you wanted to make, he goes, you were making a goddamn excuse. And I'm like, okay. And that was pretty much what it was. Like, I was looking for somebody to like instill, like, plug your hard drive into me and put the new shit in. It was a work-related issue. You were going to say something. I cut you off.
Oh, I can't even remember now. I was just listening to your story so much. Yeah, I don't remember now. But that's okay.
Sorry.
No. It's good, because that's super valuable, because a lot of times students are their own worst enemy. Like I was working with a student yesterday, and and I'll tell you what, man, I hear this. This is kind of like almost how it starts a lot of times. Well, I was watching this video on YouTube. It's like, stop me if you've heard this before. So I'm listening to this poor guy, and I was like, I can see that. Well, I mean, unfortunately, everything that you watch there is probably not really relevant to what you're trying to do. And the biggest thing that you're going to need right now is just to understand that you are struggling with one simple thing. You are slapping the crap out of the trigger. That's it. The problem that you're going to have is until you can see yourself slapping the trigger, you're not going to be able to correct it. I can sit here and tell you what you're doing wrong. I mean, I saw it the very first time. 6 rounds into the skills assessment, I saw it. So I knew what your problem was way before we ever got to the point of this discussion. But the problem is I also know that you're not ready to see the problem yet. Like you've got too much crap. You got to get out, stop watching those videos. Start trying to correct these videos on your own. I'm not saying that everything requires an experienced instructor, but in this case, for the poor guy, everything that he was doing, it was like, it's like, you ever see that movie Tin Cup?
Oh yeah.
Kevin Costner. You remember when he gets his glitch and he starts doing all the stuff, like wearing all that crazy stuff to try to, break out of the rut and whatnot? That's kind of like, I was like, get rid of all that shit. Stop with all that shit. Okay. You just need to focus on this one thing. Just watch that front sight so intently that you can start to see it starting to dip. And when you can start to see it starting to dip, that's the problem that you're having right then and there. That's it. When you can see that front sight dip, boom. Now you've solved your problem. Your problem is solved. It may take you a little bit more time to work on it, but that is technically the solution to your problem. Something
good analogy for life.
Sure. Yeah.
I got a good buddy named Z Von Durham, 5th Group Green Beret. And sometimes Z and I, like, we're close enough friends that we'll bounce like personal shit off each other. And he'll say to me, like, if I'm having something going on, he'll go, "You're not seeing your sights." Like the first time he said that, I'm like, talking about? I'm talking about this personal issue, and you're making a gun. Because you're not seeing your sights, man. Get back on your sights. You're popping your head over the gun. And he's like, I'm trying to give you an analogy that you understand. And he's like, you're looking at the top of your gun, or you're doing whatever. He's like, get back on your sights, put them on what you want to see. And like, I'm trying to come up with some complicated, convoluted answer to what really requires like focusing and.
That's one of the things that I've come to appreciate, is being able to connect to a student with something that they're familiar with, so that we can bridge this gap, this educational obstacle, if you will. Mm-hmm. So in this case, having you think about your problem through your front sight focus and why how that's you're not looking at your front sight. You're looking at everything other than your front sight. That's the problem, right? When we use those types of metaphors or analogies and we can use them for students, it's hugely valuable. I mean, so many students will have these light bulb moments go off because they can relate to that. They like, I'm not able to get through this barrier right now. That's the shooting side of the house. So I'm going to cheat and come around the side, and I'm going to use more of like a, like I said, I rely on 2 other metaphors: driving, which everybody pretty much drives, and fitness, like lifting weights, heavy weights, because those are things that a lot of people can do. Lifting weights, the barbell is not going to lie. Gravity's going to pull it straight down. It's that simple. You either have good technique and can prevent that from happening, or you don't. Driving a car is the same way. There's momentum, there's balance, there's the shift in the weight of the vehicle. All of this stuff is going to impart negative results or positive results in what you're trying to do. And when you can understand all of that, people can relate. So like a lot of times I'll tell people that, you're doing something, like if I know they have a good background in one of those, I'll rely more heavily on them to help them see the problem through their own experiences. Yeah.
I don't want to go into a rabbit hole, but I find that you're talking about like instructor development. It's like sales to me. And some people are born with the ability to to read and perceive things about another human, and it seems like it's hard to teach that intuition about another person.
It is. You're right. I'm not a good salesperson. I hate trying to sell something.
But you are, though. You've sold yourself for 20 years.
See, yes, you're right. And my point is that what I rely more on my ability to connect with that student and to be able to get. That's why in our instructor development courses, we do a lot of shooting, and you're familiar with the curriculum and all this other stuff, but we really talk a lot about the actual role of an instructor, how to be an instructor, everything from managing safety to managing the expectations of the students, to how to connect with the students, to what sort of strategies that you need to help students. Like this student A is having this problem, you got to look at this solution. And so what you're talking about is it's very tough. That's a hard skill to have, right? So the only way that you're going to, like, if you don't innately have that, like I don't believe I innately have that. I believe I had to work to get where I'm at through trial and error and reading and learning and knowledge and all this other stuff. So when we are doing our instructor development courses, one of the things that I try to try to pinpoint with the potential instructor candidate is, how well they can put themselves in the shoes of the student. Like, if you can put yourself in, like, I've been there, trust me, whatever mistakes you're going to make, I've already made them. And I've made them for for a long time. I tell this funny story. So when my very first shooting school I went to was Mid-South down Mississippi.
Oh, sure.
It was, so very legendary type of shooting school. And my first instructor was John Shaw himself.
Oh, wow.
And he still has a super thick accent. It's a Southern accent. It's hard to hear, but he was constantly in my ear, just yelling and screaming. And I remember he was yelling and screaming so much. I can't remember what he was saying. I was like, sir, I would love to be able to hit the target if I just knew how to do it. I just knew how to do it, So, he was a phenomenal shooter. And when I finally was able to get with him and have him show me what I was doing wrong so that I could try to do it. I mean, for the longest time, dude, the first half of my entire, NSW career, I didn't actually see my sights. Yeah. Well, kind of. I was looking through my sights.
Okay.
So I was, and I was shooting at the top level of my swim buddy, my shooting partner for forever. I remember one day we were doing a training. I don't remember where we were at. We were somewhere, and we got done. And I remember I walked up to him, and I said, "Hey, do you see your sights when you shoot?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You mean do you actually see the sight? Can you see it clearly? Like when the gun's going off, do you see that?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah. Why?" It's like, dude, I just now started to see the sight, and he flipped out because I was a better shot than him. And he's like, "Are you telling me that you're not actually seeing your sight? You're not looking at your front sight?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah."
That's
I didn't know what I was doing. So, I mean,
there's some good lessons there. There's a lot.
There are actually there are a lot of lessons. I forgot where I was going with this. Damn it! I'm sorry.
You're down at Mid-South.
Oh, right. So it took me a long time to try to figure out how to learn how to shoot. Like I was a great shot. I was very good, but I did not know exactly what I was doing. I'll be honest. I really didn't. We'd go through all these different drills. We'd do all these. The amount of ammo that we would shoot is ridiculous. It's insane. And I got really good at accommodating. Accommodating was how I managed. And I did accommodations in all different types of things. And so when I see students accommodating, I'm like, dude, you're not fooling anybody. I've made those mistakes. I've done that. I know exactly what you're doing. Like some of these diagnostics are tough to find, tough to figure out. And people are like, oh, scratching their head trying to figure it out. I'm like, no, dude, this is what you're doing because I've done it. And I was gifted in the sense that I was athletic, that I had a never fail attitude, that I was not going to, I would be out there, I don't know how much people know about Mid-South, but basically it was this beautiful, ranch style home with a pool. And then it had this pasture that he turned into a shooting range. And we all lived in his house. Back then he still lived there with his family. Mm-hmm. And we stayed it was a big house. So we stayed in all the guest rooms and all the other rooms that were converted. And then we would just get up in the morning, eat breakfast right there in the kitchen and go down and start shooting. And when we were done at the end of the day, everybody would go in, shower, eat, go into town, whatever. I'd go in, eat, I'd go back down, and I would take an ammo can with 1,000 rounds and just shoot. It was like paradise in some respects, but I was down there shooting because I knew that I didn't know exactly what I was doing still. I was getting by, but I didn't understand why I was getting by, how I was getting by. So as I started to evolve as a shooter, I started to recognize a lot of these issues. And then I started to understand how we call it corrective strategies. So I started to learn how to apply corrective strategies to fixing all of my shooting errors. And so just on the trigger alone, there's 6 different shooting errors, corrective strategies that go with them on the trigger alone. So, and I did every one of them. Every one of them, I made those mistakes. So it was fun. It was good. I don't regret. I learned differently. I didn't learn like everybody else. I had to just do it until I was just oh, there it is. Oh, that's how you do it. Okay, cool. And then I'd have to replicate that. So it would have been a lot easier.
I heard Todd Jarrett say one time, and Todd's a champion for 30 years. He said something to the effect of he shot 1 million rounds before he ever learned how to actually shoot. And
Absolutely.
it was something, I'm paraphrasing, but people hear that and they're like, how could that be? You're telling it.
It's exactly the truth, because number one, you don't know what you don't know. And you're not going to do that until you get a high round count going. And then number two, you're not ready to see a lot of that stuff when you first start out. Like, I wasn't ready. I mean, he was telling me this. I mean, the tips that he was giving me were spot on, but I wasn't ready to hear them. And I wasn't in a place where I could hear them. So there's a lot of that. There's also some emotional barriers and boundaries that are there that students have. Like it's an interesting thing because, Tricon, we were working at the intermediate to advanced level, even expert level. And I love working at that level because, I'm working with guys that I can relate to. I'm working with guys that I can really see true improvement. I can really get them going. A lot of times they were on the tip of the spear of the warfighters. So I was ecstatic about that. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I started working at the intro and beginner level. And it is, first of all, it's important. So like a lot of times instructors will kind of look down upon those types of classes, and that's a mistake. Number one, you've got to be a better instructor to be able to teach at that intro beginner level. Then the second thing is that you are going to see so many challenges with these students. And one of the challenges that we see is emotional challenges, not necessarily physical, just like it's not that they physically can't do it. It's emotionally, there's an issue. And like having to deal with that is not easy, but particularly in this industry, because, it's like, oh, feelings, no, bad, like I always joke, I have 2 freaking frack and they're always fighting with each other. But trying to manage other people's emotions, anxieties, fears is not to be taken lightly. It's if you want them to be successful, you have got to manage those fears and anxieties, and that means that you've got to get into some of the awkward, kind of difficult conversations. I mean, I've had people that every time the gun went off next to them, they were almost in hysterics. And you have to be compassionate, and you have to be patient, and you have to really understand. You have to assume that there's a big reason. There's a good reason for it. And you have to hope that they are going to be trustworthy, or that you're trustworthy enough for them to feel comfortable telling you what that is. I've had people tell me horrible stories about violent encounters that they had and how traumatic it was for them. And so for them to just be on the firing line, hearing a gun go off was huge.
Sure.
Man, just massive. And I don't think we really value that in some cases. We just like, just train harder, work harder, shoot more, do this. Sure. That's not the solution there, man. You've got to be able to really relate to that. I mean, not that you can relate to it if you haven't been a victim of violent crime, but you've got to be able to appreciate. Yeah, exactly. It's tough. And especially now, and we're making huge inroads in that area. I mean, nowadays we're doing more of the lower level classes than the upper level classes. And it's going to be that way. I don't ever see that changing now. It's like, now we've kind of opened Pandora's box, and now we are full speed ahead in that sense. We're really tapping into the intro and the beginner level student. And not that that's not and labels, everybody's like, oh, labels. It's just a way for us to understand your skill level so that we can properly place you. So we do skills assessments at our facility all the time. And what a skills assessment is, you come in, you shoot a course of fire. It's a standard. It's basically a standard that we've shot for freaking 12 plus years. And it allows us to properly place you in the best class for your skill.
That's a great resource. That's a great way of doing stuff.
Yeah, because so many times people are reading the course descriptions, class descriptions online. They're like, yeah, I think this this looks good, or this sounds good, or I could do that, or whatever. And then unfortunately they find out that, I bit off a little bit more than I chew. And I've had the other side of the spectrum, which is, you know what, I'm just not sure. I don't feel that confident. And these guys are good. But they're in a class that's below their skill level, and they're not really being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I was that guy once. I remember classes, I always was like the top shooter guy, and the dude that was teaching the class looked at me. He's like, "Don't come back here no more." And he wasn't being a jerk though. He was just saying, like, there's no reason for you. And I have some students that's very flattering. I'll see their name on the sign up sheet online, and I called the guy one time. I'm like, "Dude, you've been to the same course 5 times. You're good. You're a good shooter. I have nothing else to share with you other than we're going to go drink beer and eat steaks together, and that's fun. But like, go challenge yourself. Go push yourself.
Yeah.
And now he is.
It's funny. I had a student. I've had several students like that, and I had a conversation with one of them, and he gave me some bomb, and he dropped some serious bombs, knowledge bombs on me. And he was like, first of all, I do go and train with other instructors. But the reason why I come back to your class, there's really just two reasons. Number one, you're going to hold me to a standard. Number two, I know what to expect in this class. Like the format, like I said, the class structurally hasn't really changed that much. So he knows what to expect in the class. And I was like blown away by that. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I know. Because here's what I do. I use your class to test my training for the year.
I dig it.
It's like, okay, this was good. This was bad. I extended my training intervals because of work or family, and came in and thought I was going to kill it in the class, and I got my ass handed to me. Or just the opposite. You know what? What?
It's a high compliment to you.
Yeah, it was. That's what I'm saying. He dropped some serious knowledge bombs on me. I was like, damn. That's all I had to say. Damn.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that really are hugely impacting for me as an instructor, just because you're like, oh, shit, this guy gets it. Right on.
I dig it. I need to get down to one of your classes. We'll have to talk offline about getting you up here. We'll host you up here.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't been there in a while, guys. It's been like 2 or 3 years since the last time I was in Illinois. So it's been a while.
Yeah. I'll feed you. Wash your clothes, whatever. I already figured out as we're talking what the cover shot for this video will be.
What's that?
It's going to be, you'll have to just see it. You have to just see it. It'll be good. It'll be good.
I can't wait.
It'll be good.
I can't wait.
Yeah. My editor is going to go, I'm not doing that. And I go, yes, you will. Uh-huh. Drew's going to be listening to this as he's editing it, and Drew's going to shake his head as he hears this. How do people get a hold of you, man? We've been talking for 2 hours, and I got to pee.
Oh, my God. Okay, so it's pretty easy. TridentConcepts.com. If they have access to the internet, which who in the world doesn't these days, you can go to our website, TridentConcepts.com. You can follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook. I think it's JL_Gonzales. And then I think it's Jeff Lewis or Jeff L. Gonzales on Facebook. I can't remember.
Okay.
They can just Google it and find all that information.
Is there a Trident Concepts Instagram account?
Yeah, there is.
Okay. But I think you do most of your work through the...
I do. Most of it is on my private, but there is a Tricon work account, and I'm putting more effort into it. I just, trying to manage one social media account is like a Herculean event. Trying to manage two, I'm like, ugh. So I'm getting...
Excuses.
No, I said trying to manage the other is like, oh.
I know. I was just driving the point home to the listeners. And then again, we already mentioned it. If somebody's in the Austin area, you're at The Range. That's what it's called, right?
It's actually cleverly called The Range Austin.
The Range Austin. Okay. All right. So therangeaustin.com. Somebody could go and find a class there to hook up with you. And then because I'm friends with Dave Spalding, you guys have something that you're working on with Ken.
Yes.
And I actually work with CCW Safe myself.
Fantastic.
So go ahead and pitch that.
Right. So I'm really happy about that. Actually, another really good friend of mine, Larry Vickers, approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in this organization called Firearms Trainers Association. And he explained to me what it was about. And I immediately was like, yes, I am there. So I'm one of the original board members for the FTA. And what the FTA does is it's an instructor insurance instructor enhancement program. So what we do is obviously we provide instructor coverage, which nowadays is becoming more and more difficult. And then at the same time, we provide tons of resources for an up and coming instructor. Everything. I mean, I'm not just talking about like curriculum about how to shoot, but how to manage a class, how to engage with customers, what to do for this, what to do for that. The board members, the founding members, I should say, Larry Vickers, Ken Hackathorn, myself, Dave Spalding, Scott Reedy from the SIG Academy. So there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and information there. And the way that we are approaching it, the way I'm approaching it is the anti-gun coalition is targeting our ability to not just possess firearms, but to educate people on firearms. So they've done that financially by attacking the NRA. They've done that financially by attacking the banks and the institutions that support us. So right now, the FTA stands completely autonomously, and we're able to provide insurance for all different types of instructor organizations within the firearms industry. And the way that we look at it is we are there as a bulwark to protect the industry, to protect the profession. That's actually awesome. like a hashtag, if you will, protecting the profession. Because without the instructors to continue to educate the next group of kids, the next group of young adults, the next group of single moms, whatever the case might be, we're going to lose that battle, and we'll fall flat on our face. So it represents to me a clear and present danger to our freedoms and our liberties when the instructor industry is basically neutered in a sense, because we can't get insurance, we can't do our daily finances because of banking institutions, all this other business. It's real. It's actually a big thing, and it's surreptitious, which pisses me off because the Anti-Gun Coalition is very clever about how they go about their agenda, and what people don't realize is that this is a major agenda for them.
Yeah, so it's a long-term strategic ploy.
Well, it is, but attacking the firearms, the instructors, is huge because we started paying attention to it. We're like, holy shit, this is like it's a 9-round championship bout, and we're about ready to start the 9th round, and we're way behind on the card. We're super behind. We've lost every round in a sense. So it became a necessity for us. So I'm hugely excited and very proud to be a part of that. We're doing a lot of stuff there. There's only going to be more things coming out. If you're an instructor and you are looking to do this professionally, one of the things you'll have to have is insurance. And so now there's a resource for people to do that.
It's fantastic.
Thanks.
I appreciate. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said thanks.
I appreciate you guys doing it. It's a lot of that is thankless work. It's not selling insurance, which is not what you do, but it's not the big picture. People need to see is like, I don't care about that kind of stuff. It is the bare bones fight for liberty that I think a lot of people just look past, and they want to look at the fancy guy running around with a suppressed gun with nods and some gun money with
titties. True. I'm glad that you actually said that you had to pee, because I just realized that my battery's down to 5%. So
we'll cut it off, guys. Take the time to go look at some of the people that we're talking about. I don't want to insult Jeff and say that he's such a seasoned dude, but you've been around for almost 20 years doing this. That's a long time. So I think you're starting to get into that class of seasoned dudes, and in 10 years, you'll definitely be.
Yay!
No, it's legit, though. It's legit.
Yeah.
Just something is, and I've had guys say to me, this is just Mick with sour grapes because he doesn't have 1 million followers or something. It's like, no, it's not. To me, it's about what's the goal and what kind of product are people pumping out. So I've been in business almost over 20 years now, self-employed, and I have like a very simple metric by which I judge other businesses. If they're still in business after 15, 20 years, they're doing something right. And it's not just people. And like eventually the laws of nature, you'd have been weeded out if you were doing.
So true. So true.
Kind of the way I look at it.
So
we'll get together offline. I want to get you somehow scheduled to get up here. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Dude,
I'd be happy to.
Go follow him on social media. It's always good stuff. He just posted a super sexy picture in a black suit, doing the.
Actually, look closer.
You get what I'm saying, though.
Oh yeah, but you'll have to look closer.
It wasn't a sexy black suit.
Oh no, it wasn't me doing that.
No, I'm just saying. It's like that was.
I do get it, and you're gonna laugh when I tell you this offline. You're gonna laugh. I'll tell you in just
okay.
A second.
Dudes and dudettes, we appreciate your time. Check out Jeff's stuff. Go check out the schedule at therangeaustin.com. Thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. Share this stuff with friends and family. Liberty is not free, but thought is, and you have a right to think whatever you want. Just don't be stupid and don't be a dickhead about it. Be well. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.